Welcome to Kathryn Raaker's World. Innovation, culture, adventure, fashion and health, artists, destinations, traditions. This is Kathryn Raaker's World.
Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker of Kathryn Raaker's World. My guest today is Dr. Gerald Blumenthal, and he's been on my show many times. And while establishing a major business in 2 countries, being an international keynote speaker and business mentor, Dr. Gerald Blumenthal has also written the 5 books. 4 of his books are novels, and 1 is a nonfiction piece on the handwriting analysis of 34 of history's most notorious serial killers. Blumenthal's literary works have been praised by fellow authors as dazzling and groundbreaking. All 5 of his books are available for purchase. Order your copies now, buy at Amazon. So welcome to our show, Jerry. It's always a pleasure to hear.
Thank you very much.
And let's
I feel like I know you so well.
I do too. Okay, so let me ask you, where are we starting at today?
Well, I'm going to talk about, in general terms, about serial killers. And I want to start off by saying that serial killers have been interviewed, their DNAs have been studied, and their brains scanned. Their families have been interviewed, and yet we are still no closer to understanding what makes them so different from the rest of us. The study of a killer's mind has fascinated scientists and laymen alike. The most gruesome murders are generally attributed to psychotics rather than psychopaths. Psychotic serial killers have lost touch with reality, while psychopathic serial killers know exactly what they are doing. The most sensational killers are thrill killers. They kill because they like it. They like it so much. They revel in finding their targets and in planning of it as much as in the execution. Some serial killers, because of their ability to blend in with the population, have eluded law enforcement for many years. And these are some of the questions that we always ask. Are serial killers born or bred? In other words, nature versus nurture. Why do they kill? What is the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath? And what do brain scans show? All of these questions have fascinated me for 35 years. Today, I'm going to discuss some information, general information about serial killers. And before I do that, I just want to set up my little program here, and we are ready to go. Inside the mind of a serial killer. This is a very common question. How many active serial killers are there in the United States? Now, the FBI defines a serial killer as someone who murders 2 or more victims with a cooling off period between crimes. An investigative journalist, Hargrove, has estimated that there are over 2,000 at-large serial killers in the United States. This is a list of some of the most infamous serial killers.
Wow, unbelievable. Who are they?
I'm going to go back here. The first one, let me go back here. Okay, the first one that I put a red ring around is Ted Bundy. Okay?
Yes.
Ted Bundy kidnapped, raped, and murdered numerous young women and girls during the 1970s, or possibly earlier. After more than a decade of denials, he confessed to 30, but many believed that he may have killed up to 100. The next one is David Berkovitz, with the red thing around him. David Berkovitz, also known as the son of Sam and the 44 caliber killer, pleaded guilty to 8 shootings that began in New York City on July the 29th, 1976. Next one is Jeffrey Dahmer, also known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, was a serial killer and sex offender who committed the murder and dismemberment of 17 young men and boys between 1978 and 1982. Richard Ramirez, dubbed the Night Stalker, was a serial killer and serial rapist, kidnapper, child molester, and burglar. He was convicted in 1989 and sentenced to death, but he died of natural causes a few years later while incarcerated. This is John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy was a serial killer and sex offender known as the Killer Clown. He murdered at least 33 young men and boys. This is Dennis Rader, also known as BTK, which stands for Blind Torture Kill. Between 74 and 91, Rader killed 10 people in Wichita and Park City, Kansas, and sent taunting letters to the police and newspapers describing the actual crime scenes. This is Ed Kemper. By the way, he was 6'9", a very imposing young man.
Wow.
He was a rapist and a necrophile. He murdered 6 college students before murdering his mother and her best friend, following his parole for murdering his paternal grandparents. He was released out of a mental institution before he went on his killing spree. Finally, in this list, I have Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer. He was initially convicted of 48 separate murders, but it is believed that he may have murdered over 90. Some serial killers, because of their ability to blend in with the population, just like a chameleon, have avoided capture by law enforcement for many, many years. I just want to mention the Zodiac Killer, because some, like the Zodiac Killer, who was responsible for 37 murders, has never been caught.
Wow.
It begs the question, is there a serial killer living in your neighborhood?
Wow.
This is a list. It's a few examples of those serial killers who managed to blend in with the population, just like a chameleon. They were incredibly astute at doing that. The first one we'll discuss is Ted Bundy, probably the most notorious serial raper and killer of recent memory. Because of his good looks and education, he had little trouble luring over 100 young females into his web. He worked for the Seattle Suicide Hotline, and he worked for the Seattle Prevention Commission and actually wrote a manual on date rape prevention. This is a man who raped over 100 young women, and yet he wrote the manual on how to prevent date rape.
Was he ever married?
No, yeah, he was in jail. When he was finally found guilty, he married a woman and actually managed to impregnate her.
Oh, wow. Did she?
His first girlfriend was Elizabeth Klopfer. She had everything he wanted, but he was devastated when she let him go. It's interesting to note that Elizabeth Klopfer had this long hair with a parting in the middle, and all of Bundy's victims had the same appearance, long hair with a parting in the middle. Here's a few of them.
Wow.
During the period 74 and 78, he sexually assaulted and killed many young women in 5 different states: Washington, Oregon, Colorado, Utah, and finally, Florida. It was while he was in Florida that he killed 2 students and injured 3 more at the Florida State University Chi Omega sorority house. A bite mark on one of the students proved that it belonged to Bundy. Bundy finally confessed to 28 murders, and some estimated that he was responsible for hundreds of deaths. He was executed in January 1989.
Wow. So he had a smirk on his face when he died.
Pardon?
He had a smirk on his face when he died, apparently.
He was electrocuted, yes.
Wow.
That does that. I don't know if you've ever been electrocuted, but
Yeah.
that's how you will look. The next person I want to discuss is John Wayne Gacy. He assaulted and murdered at least 33 young men and boys. Most of his victims were buried in the crawl space of his home. Gacy was great at blending in with his community. He worked as an assistant precinct captain for a Democratic candidate. He was married with 2 children. He joined the local JCs as was named Man of the Year in April '64. Here he's seen holding hands with then First Lady Rosalind Carter. It's incredible that at this stage, he was given clearance by the Secret Service, even though at this stage he had already murdered a few young men.
Wow.
But he was held in very high regard for his fundraising work, and in '67 was named outstanding president of the Waterloo JCs. He performed as a clown and volunteered his services at numerous local parties, political functions, charitable events, and children's hospitals. This is a view of his crawl space and some of the victims.
Oh, wow. In his kitchen?
It was under the floor space of his kitchen, yes.
Wow.
But there were 26 bodies under that floor space.
And you couldn't smell them?
Yeah, it was terrible, the smell. The police, when they finally did a search, they recognized the smell. His conviction for 33 murders was at that time one of the highest in the United States. He was executed on May the 10th, 1994.
We need to stop for a break.
Sure.
We need to take a short break now with our author, Gerald Blumenthal, and serial killers, why do they kill? And we'll be right back after these important messages on Kathryn Raaker's World. We are back on Kathryn Raaker's World with our noted, wonderful author, Gerald Blumenthal, and we're discussing serial killers, why do they kill, and how they did it. Go ahead, Jerry.
Thank you very much. This is Dennis Rader, also known as BTK, which once again stands for Bind, Torture, Kill.
Wow.
blended in so well with the public that he was not apprehended till many years later. He was a married man, and here's a picture of him with his two children.
Wow.
He was a scoutmaster, a compliance officer, and get this, he was president of the Christ Lutheran Church.
Whoa. How did they catch him?
That's for another story, but it
Okay.
was interesting. I've got a whole series on how they get caught.
Okay, so we'll do that the next time we're on, but go ahead.
This is the Otero family, the first four. Those were his first four victims. He killed them just at random. He had no particular reason to kill them. After a decade-long hiatus, Rader resumed sending letters to the public, to the newspapers, and finally he was arrested. And as I said before, that's another story, how he was caught. Now I want to talk about serial killers, making of a serial killer. Of the serial killers I have researched, most of them had traumatic childhoods. This trauma was often associated with adoption, physical or mental abuse, or some combination of each of these. Some of the questions that came up amongst these few serial killers who were adopted, I mean, these were really bad guys, and each one of them was adopted. And the question they asked their counselor, was my mother a prostitute? Was she a nun? Was my father a gangster or hero? And most important, why was I rejected? As can be seen from the slide, this is just a partial list of those who were adopted. How about childhood trauma? This is a partial list, once again, of serial killers who were abused in their childhood. They had deeply traumatic experiences, especially in their childhood, and it can have a really deeper effect on their adult life. In particular, the extent of child abuse reported among serial killers has the question, are serial killers born or are they created? One of the worst cases that I want to report on was the sad story of Eileen Woznos. This is what she said after she was in jail. She had murdered 7 men. I robbed them and I killed them as cold as ice, and I would do it again. And I know I would kill another person because I've hated humans for so long. This is a picture of Eileen. Obviously needed dental surgery.
That's for sure, she did.
She was eventually executed. And by the way, her suffering, it was so bad. She never met her father. He was in jail at the time for raping a 7-year-old girl.
Oh, God.
He committed suicide. When Eileen was almost 4 years old, her mother abandoned her, leaving her with her maternal grandparents, both of whom were alcoholics.
Oh, wow.
Her grandfather sexually assaulted her and beat her when she was just a child. In 1970, at the age of 14, she fell pregnant by one of the friends of her grandfather who raped her. These are the early signs of serial killers. The most important signs are torturing small animals, arson, petty theft, peeping toms, and bedwetting past the age of 13. Torturing small animals, number 1. These are 4 serial killers who really tortured animals. You see, they wanted to practice before they did the real thing. This is Ted Bundy. As a child, he tortured animals. This is Jeffrey, and he killed neighbors and pets, impaling animals' heads on a stick.
Oh, absolutely gross.
Dennis Rader, he was extremely cruel to animals. Let's discuss arson. Well, David Berkovitz, son of Sam, Phantom of the Bronx, was later nicknamed Pyro because he set fire more than 1,400 times.
Wow.
Petty theft was another feature, an early feature of serial killers. This is the story of Joseph D'Angelo, who was just recently found after 47 years.
Wow.
Joseph D'Angelo was committed because he committed shoplifting while he was a policeman. And not only was he fired, but he went on a killing spree. He later murdered 12 times. He raped 59 times, and he burglarized 120 times.
Wow.
Robert Durst, some of you may know him. He was a multiple murderer. And here's a picture of him shoplifting a sandwich. And this man at the time had $100 million in the bank.
Wow.
Another feature of serial killers are the peeping Toms. These are three that are very well known: Ted Bundy, Dennis Rader, and Joseph D'Angelo. 68% of serial killers wet their bed post-adolescence. Gary Ridgway was a classic example. And that is the end.
Wow. I can't tell you how much this has been so exciting having you on our show. And is there another book? Are you doing another book on serial killers, or what's happening?
I'm writing actually a compendium about all the serial killers, about their lives, their crimes, and their capture, their final capture. It's a long book, and it also deals with handwriting. I'll just show you here the Felon's Claw, which is the classic sign of a serial killer in handwriting.
Wow.
But I would like to give another talk on how they were captured.
Yes, I want you to do another talk on that if you don't mind coming on our show.
I don't mind. How was the time?
So tell us the time. I'd like to have you by the either end of the week or the first of next week, so I can do it as a 2-part segment. How about that?
Okay.
That work?
That'll work.
So let me ask you this. When can you tell people where to go to buy your books? And all of your books are extremely exciting, actually. And so where can they do that, Gerald?
All on Amazon.
All on Amazon. So go to Gerald Blumenthal on Amazon for serial killers, their lives, their crimes, and their handwriting by Gerald Blumenthal, PhD, right?
Correct.
Okay. And can you give your website, please?
The website is Dr. Gerald Blumenthal .com, not .com.
All right.
drgeraldblumenthal.com.
Well, now we want to say goodbye. Thank you very much for joining us today on Let's Just Talk, a radio show in Kathryn Raaker's world. And what I need you to do is to stop sharing so I can end the show.
You're right. Stop sharing. There you go.
There we go. Thank you so much for joining me today on Kathryn Raaker's world. It's always a pleasure having you. And don't forget to go to our websites at letsjusttalkradio.com and KathrynRaakersWorld.com. Thanks.
And may I say, Kathryn, that you look younger every time I see you.
I love
know how old you are.
I'm 77. So thank you. And give a really big hug for your beautiful wife. Thank you.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.